will be taking turn, and he does have the white flag education and population loss.
Good afternoon. I'm glad to be here, and as Rabbi Hirschman used to say, before I speak, I'd like to say something. On the topic of the state of Illinois, I want to tell you this, that it was the winter before last, I got on the early train, I was early after 7:57, and got my seat, and then I immediately went to the club car to get coffee, and when I entered the club car, I saw this tall, craggy man ahead of me ordering coffee, and I thought, I'm straight about this. I thought, is that George Kennedy, the actor? And then I thought, wait a minute, is he still alive? And then I thought, is that George Ryan, the governor? And I thought, is he out? Is he home? Is he out? And so I reckoned that it was former Governor Ryan, and so I introduced myself to him, and he just gave me a nod. And then I gave him my card, McGuire, State Senator, and he looked at it and then said, I don't know what you're going to do. So, education. I've been asked to read a statement from Natalie Manley, who can't be with us today, on K-12 education. So this is it, verbatim. Current issues regarding education and funding and what's being done to address them. Number one, the teacher shortage. Raising the teacher minimum wage, minimum salary to $40,000 a year is phased in, and next, the issue will need more work, but expect to see more on this. Next, rollback of the 3% salary cap for teachers, sometimes called pension spiking. Last year, a law went into effect that would place a 3% cap on teacher salary increases during the last 4 years before their retirement. Prior to this, the cap on salary increases was 6%. Legislation passed the Senate that would restore the cap to 6%, but there is a belief that this legislation may be held up in the House. And finally, education funding. At the very least, the General Assembly will fund education at the minimum level required by law, but the budget process is ongoing. In this proposed budget, Governor Pritzker has called for an increase in education funding for a total of $7.2 billion for K-12. He has proposed an additional $25 million for schools, $21 million for special ed, $5 million for career and technical educational programs for high schools, and $100 million for childhood education. I'm going to talk about higher education. As Jen noted, I'm chair of the higher ed committee. So higher ed is often referred to from coast to coast as the balance wheel of state budgets, meaning that when times are good, higher ed gets more state investment. When times are bad, that state investment is reduced. And that's been happening in Illinois for at least 20 years. And the budget impasse, of course, made things worse and put some of our regional public universities on the ropes. So of Illinois' 9 public universities, 12 campuses in total, because there's 3 U of I's and 2 SIUs, of course. The strong schools, strong in enrollment and strong financially, are UIC, University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign, Southern Illinois University at Edwardsville, ISU, and to the relief of Hugh O'Hara and probably others in this room, Eastern is coming back. So again, the strong core are UI Urbana-Champaign, UI Chicago, ISU, SIU Edwardsville, and Charleston. Eastern is rebounding. So after the impasse ended, Illinois' higher education system was in bad shape. And so a Democratic state rep and a Republican state rep and I decided to form a higher ed working group outside the normal committee structure to see what we could do. So we heard from the universities and different stakeholders, and then we fashioned a couple bills which are now law to help make college more affordable and also provide some stability to the schools and the students and their families. So I'll briefly tell you about those. So one is called MAP Priority Access. MAP stands for Monetary Award Program, and that's Illinois' need-based financial aid program. And it's the envy of many other states. MAP has existed for almost 40 years. This year's appropriation is $401 million, which is a record high. But even at that, fewer than half the students who qualify for MAP get it. Well, one problem exacerbated by the impasse was the state getting MAP funding out to the schools, out to the students that had gained MAP grants. The payments were late, and that undermined, of course, a lot of students and families' belief in MAP grants and the permanence of them. So the MAP Priority Access Bill that we passed, which is now law, does this. If you get math your first year in college, you're first in line to get the second, third, and fourth year. So you don't have to worry that from year to year you're going to get shut out from this competition from math grant. So again, provide some security, some stability, some predictability. If you get math first year, you got first dibs on it, second, third, and fourth. So that's for very low income students. A lot of you have probably filled out the FAFSA. Most of the students who qualify for math have EFC, expected family contribution of 0. So then we tried to do something to help, I don't know what you call them, middle class, lower middle class families whose annual income is too much to qualify for math, but you know they don't have $30,000 sitting in the sugar bowl either to send their kid to college. So we created the Aim High Merit Aid Program, and I've forgotten what the acronym Aim High stands for. And this is the only new expenditure in our package bill. So we created a state fund of $25 million, allocated it to 9 public universities based on enrollment. And the universities can tap into this fund only as they spend more of their own money on financial aid. So for every buck that Western Illinois spends on financial aid, it can draw down a buck. So it's going to be a $50 million benefit to students. And a student is eligible for an Aim High scholarship if his or her family income is no more than 6 times the federal poverty level. So for a student from a family of 4, that's $150,000. Thank you.
Send you an updated committee list. That's an old one, so I apologize for that. I'm on pensions now. I want to talk about that a little bit later, but I'm going to be brief on this section. Later I'm going to be talking about progressive income tax. The 2 issues for this section to talk about were education and the out-migration. Part of the out-migration, I'd like to yield that time and add that towards when we talk about the progressive income tax. In terms of education, I think most people in the room, little quick show of hands, are you aware of the funding formula change that happened a couple years ago? Okay, so the state is on the hook, and it's the right thing to do. One of the issues in our state is that too much of our funding of education comes from property taxes. The problem with structuring things that way is that you have very rich and very poor districts. And it even creates a situation where some districts spend extra money they don't have. They're spending, upwards $30,000, $35,000 per student. And then you have some districts that are spending $6,000, $7,000 per student. So in aggregate, it wasn't necessarily the case that we weren't spending enough money on education, but it was that you had pockets. And there's a lot of economic effects of this that are bad. The biggest ones being that low property wealth areas that have higher tax rates. Low property wealth areas are also areas that are probably prime for manufacturing, industrial, different, think the South Suburbs, for example. But when your property tax rates are in the double digits, no one's going to build a manufacturing plant. No one's going to build a warehouse in those areas because it just doesn't make economic sense. So the way we had previously been funding education, and to some extent still are, had a grave negative effect on our economy. The one thing that I would like to see change with the funding formulas is all the districts are ranked tier 1, 2, 3, or 4. And the more wealth you have, property wealth, you're a tier 4 district. Less property wealth, you're a tier 1 district. You don't have that much money to go out into the community and grab value to fund education. Well, about a third of the city of Chicago is in a TIF district. And we all know the corrupt games that are in the headlines right now that are plagued with the valuations of property. So Chicago is considered a tier 1 district. They're considered property poor. Yet they have a magnificent mile. They have some of the richest real estate in the state. How this affects us is the state then has to subsidize or make up for that shortfall. So you have a building like Willis Tower that sells for $1.5 billion. That's assessed at $300,000. And then you have buildings like that. Money's in the TIF district anyway. So if there was anything that we can do to make the funding formula work better, that would be to be honest about property values throughout the state, which would create a better balance in some of those poor districts would come up. So I know you have a lot of topics to cover today, so if I was going to leave you with one thing on education, is the TIF situation in the city of Chicago and the under-reporting of assessed values in the city of Chicago has a negative effect statewide because it skews the formula where the money from the state goes, and that would free up more money to go to poor districts, downstate districts, and frankly some of the districts in Will County. Thank you.
talking about education and out-migration. Now, you heard my committee assignments, and I'm not involved in any of the education committees, because I come from a corporate business background, so I've tried to concentrate on those areas. So let me just give you a kind of a 10,000-foot view of what I see happening in the education front. And one of the things that we've done in the past, and you are parents, many of you are involved in education, and you know that we spend a lot of time over a lot of years worrying about the qualifications of our teachers and the attainments, the achievements of our students, and putting a lot of emphasis in evaluating our teachers and in compensating our teachers with respect to the outcomes of our kids. Well, guess what? The pendulum is kind of swinging back the other way, and what we're seeing is a shortage of teachers. And, you know, perhaps that shouldn't surprise us, that now we need to try to encourage more people to go into the teaching profession, particularly here in the state of Illinois. So there's a lot of efforts, many bills around changing or reducing or eliminating some of the what are now called barriers in place of getting your teacher's license in the state of Illinois, different tests or different qualifying things that you have to leap over in order to be qualified as a teacher. Perhaps this year we'll swing back and we'll get a happy medium between making sure that our students are being taught by people who have the right qualifications and not putting up artificial barriers that are preventing people with passion and ability from being able to get into a classroom in spite of the fact that they might have gotten 1 point too little on some test that probably doesn't measure something that 21st century students need in the first place. There's a lot of discussion around teacher salaries, and coming from being a Republican and coming from a business background, one thing we need to understand about teacher salaries is that they're very skewed to the far end of your career. And so that's hard for young people entering the profession because these are all done by contract. The teachers are union, so the contract is kind of like that. So it's hard when you're beginning your career as a teacher, whereas at the end of your career as a teacher, you're very highly compensated. And so what's the sweet spot between saying you must have this salary and tying the hands of school districts? It's a little bit of a challenge, and we've got to try to work on that. And somehow, and keep in mind that the people negotiating the salaries in all the school boards, with school boards all over the state, are the people at the high end of the scale. You're not hearing, because the young people are not the union rep. So, if young people aren't compensated, perhaps it's not the state of Illinois or the school board that's entirely at fault. Okay, enough of that. What can I say about out-migration? I think that there's some denial in Springfield that this is a real issue that we have to be concerned about. As someone in a district that's affected by it, and what district isn't perhaps, I think we need to deal with the fact that families, particularly families with children that they need to send to college, can't pay property taxes and get enough money for their kids to go to college. Every story, you don't want every story to be anecdotal, but I think that's what we're seeing. And we're seeing people with fixed incomes having to make a decision. Is this how I want my future to be, or do I need to be in a lower cost, a lower price point in my retirement? We need to acknowledge that these are real issues and come up with real solutions and actually provide some property tax relief going forward. And so far, we haven't really discussed that in Springfield, and not because some of us haven't been speaking out. So stand by, maybe we'll get to some of these difficult issues. Talk to you again later about infrastructure.
So if you see from my committee assignments, I'm not too much into the education realm. I'm going to rely on some of the experts for higher education. My good friend and colleague, Senator McGuire, for the K through 12, Senator Batinick is usually a good source to get that information. So with that, I'm going to be kind of brief here because I know we've got a lot of bigger topics to talk about. But the South migration, it's an issue, and it's been going on for a long, long time. It's something that's not new. Illinois has been losing population for decades. Just look at each census. We lose a congressional seat each and every census when they do the reappropriation. So it's something that's been going on. But the drivers, I'm going to say, one, it's weather. Two, it's our tax policy. And property taxes are a huge issue. And that directly relates to education. And I say this in many of the forums I talk to folks at, is you look at your property tax bill, whether it's $7,000 a year or $10,000 a year, 66% of that is going to education, K through 12, or K through 12, and then your your community college. So those are the drivers, and the simple fact of the matter is because the state's not funding them correctly. And that's something that we're addressing. It's not an overnight fix. The education funding reform plan that we passed 2 years ago, we've been putting $350 additional dollars into K through 12 education each and every year. The governor's proposed to go another $25 million over that $350 million of new dollars. But it's trying to get these adequacy levels. And granted, there are districts with TIFs. I've got it in my own backyard with a multimodal intermodal facility that's under a TIF district, and the schools aren't reaping that benefit. So those are things that we need to address down the road, and hopefully that can change some of the atmosphere. The other part of out-migration is the loss of manufacturing jobs. In my bio, I started out at Caterpillar in 1994. At that time, there were 2,500 employees. Back in the 70s, it was about 10,000. Today, as of February 28th, it's shut down. It's no longer there. And those were good paying jobs. You know, you could raise a family on that job. You could go on a vacation, buy a car, buy a house. They're not being replaced with that. The logistics industry that's moved in has created thousands of jobs, but they're not the type of jobs that we had. And that's something we need to address. It's really a serious issue because these are supposed to be full-time jobs that are supposed to be there to provide for a family and build a community, and they're not doing it. So I think, in my opinion, that's some of the reasons why we are seeing some of this out-migration. Secondly, seniors want to get down where it's warm and enjoy a little golf and R&R in their retirement, and some of them are moving out for that reason. But here in Illinois, this is the one good thing we do have. We don't tax retirement income. So with that, thank you, and look forward to talking to you on the transportation issues.
I did a little survey of my district, which is Frankfort, Mokina, New Lenox, Orland, Tinley, Homer, Lockport, and a little bit of Joliet 2 years ago. And what surprised me was the third issue that came back as really important to people. The first two would surprise you, education and property taxes. The third one that came back from people in my district was transportation. And I-80, if you can picture, where my district is, runs right through it, right between Orland and Tinley and Frankfort, Mokina, and New Lenox. And people were unhappy about I-80. They're unhappy because when it closes, the trucks are on the side roads, and they're unhappy because they feel it's unsafe. And many people in my district, and I bet here as well, will not allow their teenage drivers to drive on I-80, or perhaps don't even drive on it themselves anymore. So that's when I decided to make transportation a focus of mine, because you can't be, you've heard us all say, you can't be an expert on every topic that the legislature deals with. You kind of have to pick your passion and go with it. And there are just a lot of things that we need to do. One thing that we're concentrating on this year, and I'm interested in Larry's opinion, but I think we're both pretty optimistic that before May 31st, we will be able to move forward with a capital plan for the state of Illinois. We haven't had one since 2009. You may, go back into the time machine and remember Pat Quinn was the governor then. So it's been a minute since we've had a capital bill, and we need to look at some additional sustainable funding for infrastructure in the state of Illinois. And I won't go on and on with all the statistics. I think everybody in this room, because you live here within spitting range of I-80 and 55 and 355, that you know the challenges that we have with our infrastructure and what the gap is between suitable and where we are now. A lot of our infrastructure has a C or a D as opposed to an A associated with it by the civil engineers. So that's one of the things that we're looking forward to. I am one of the delegates, and Larry is too, to the capital negotiations that are taking place in Springfield. It's taking place with respect to the Capital Appropriations Committee, the formal committee structure, and also kind of a working group under the guidance of the governor's office. So there's a little bit of a two-pronged attack in trying to figure out how big is the demand, how much can we afford to dedicate to this, and exactly how are we going to implement it. It's early days, really nothing has been decided. We're kind of what I call the hunter-gatherer stage. In other words, let's go find all the projects that we need to pay attention to. Let's go find any possible revenue source, and let's see, then bring everything to the table and start negotiating. We haven't really started the negotiating part, and times are running out until May 31st. So I think we're going to have some late nights and some early mornings. So I've been trying to get a lot of sleep on these 2 weeks of break and to eat very healthy, because I think we're going to be in a little bit of a marathon situation. And this is really important. And the other thing I will say, and there may be some folks that are working with education or parks or charitable organizations, we do expect the capital bill to include a vertical component. This is Springfield speak for buildings, because roads are horizontal and buildings go up, right? So, and so there might be some funds available for state buildings that need some attention, or perhaps some granting or matching authority to local governments that do have buildings or infrastructure like water infrastructure that needs some attention. And so we're actually looking at both of those fronts, not just roads and bridges, but also vertical infrastructure. This is bipartisan. It's not particularly political or particularly acrimonious. Everybody's got their head down and working and trying to do something about turning some attention to something that's sorely needed. And I'm going to let Larry get up, and maybe then you'll have some questions for us. Is questions appropriate?
I think at the end.
Oh, at the very end. Okay. So I'll leave some time, and I think I've given you a high-level look of where we are. Thanks.
So, as Representative McDermed stated, we are working on the capital bill, a long-needed capital bill. So, just a little history. The state of Illinois has used these capital bills to run routine maintenance on our roadways. They use the capital funding for repaving 55 or doing shoulder work, whatever the case may be, and they haven't really gone into doing huge infrastructure improvements. So, everybody here knows about Route 80. It's been in the news. It's on the radio. It's on Chicago media. And the simple fact of the matter is we've got a highway that was built in 1968, 1969, and now it's reached its lifespan. And no major improvements have been made to that stretch of highway in all that time. I mean, we've done maintenance work on it to keep it sustainable, but it's due to be completely replaced. So just to shortly focus on this so people understand, it's about $1.5 billion to $2 billion project to completely upgrade I-80 from what I would call Route 30 in New Lenox to Ridge Road in Grundy County to create a 6-lane to 8-lane highway with wide shoulders, urbanized medians, to where it's safe, it's passable. If something happens, you're able to get off. You've got extended ramps and better entrances and exits to the interstate system, and that's what's really needed there. So as we're going through this capital project or capital plan building, you know, we're looking at TFIC that we've sit on, Representative McDermed, Senator McGuire, Representative Connor, we sit on this Transportation for Illinois Coalition. It's been meeting over the last 2 years across the whole state, looking at the infrastructure needs that we have in the state of Illinois. And that's roads, bridges, rail, waterways, transit systems. So, and we've been studying these needs and how do we come up with a true plan that can start funding these. And so this is what's kind of been submitted. There's been a couple bills in the Senate and I think one in the House, the Chamber, Illinois Chamber introduced one. That's kind of the conversation starters. But I mean, we're looking at $40 to $50 billion in needs just on the horizontal side. And that's immediate needs. And on the vertical side, you're looking at another probably 25 to 30 billion. And if you're to put that all together, you're looking at about $80 billion in asks that is coming forward to Springfield. So we get the treat of sitting down and trying to decipher where our priorities are. This 80, it's just, I don't think it's going to be that big, and we're going to try to maintain it. So going back into that, if you've got, let's just say, for example, a $30 billion 5-year or 10-year plan to do capital improvements. Myself and Senator McGuire, Representative McDermed, represent one area of the state that's kind of requesting to get $1.5 billion and take it away from the needs of everybody else. On top of that, that would probably take away money for other projects along Route 53, Route 6, Route 52. So those are the things that we've got to kind of weigh out with the needs of infrastructure here in the state. I understand that we've seen tremendous growth in our county over the last 10 years or 15 years since the onset of the intermodal systems and the logistics service within our state, our county. You know, we've become the hub of national commerce. We're looking at ways that we can maybe get some of that revenue. I tell the story down in Springfield that probably over the last 10, 15 years, there's been $1 trillion, a trillion with a T, worth of commerce that has moved in and out of our area. Government hasn't captured a tenth of that. Not even a tenth. So that's some of the issues that we're facing. And how do we do that? So we're studying these different ideas. Hopefully our plan is, and my plan is, as part of this working group, is to come up with something that's fair and sustainable. And so going back to how we've done capital in the past is using those dollars for maintenance. The plan in this one is to do a pay-as-you-go system. So we're raising enough dollars each and every year to go on with an ongoing maintenance program throughout the state, so we don't every 10 years have to pass this huge expansive capital bill to fund basic needs that we need on our roadway systems and our infrastructure systems. So again, we go back down next week. We start the 30th. We've got 5 weeks to May 31st. There's a lot of big asks. My colleagues will be talking about some of the other ones here later this afternoon, but this capital bill is a big bill. We've got a budget. We've got fair income tax. I mean, these are big things coming before the General Assembly. If anyone was down in Springfield the last 2 to 3, 4 weeks before the spring break, you've seen how we were running around like we didn't even know where we were going. Most of us didn't because we were running around so much. But I got a feeling that this spring is going to be very, very long sessions and a lot of meetings to try to hammer all these big issues out to be done by May 31st. With that, I look forward to questions after the event. Thank you.
As you wish. Hello again. I'm a co-sponsor of Senate Joint Resolution CA Constitutional Amendment 1. And that is a resolution which, if passed by 3/5 majority of both chambers, will appear on the November 2020 budget so that you can vote on whether or not Illinois should move from a flat income tax to a progressive income tax, graduated income tax. So I'll read you the language of the amendment. So this is Illinois Constitution, Article 9, Section 3, limitation on income taxation. And currently there's a sentence that says as follows, and the amendment should be approved by you voters, would be struck. This sentence would be struck. A tax on or measured by income shall be at a non-graduated rate. Again, the Illinois Constitution currently says a tax on or measured by income shall be at a non-graduated rate. That sentence would be replaced by this. There may be one tax on the income of individuals and corporations. This may be a fair tax, where lower rates apply to lower income levels and higher rates apply to higher income levels. I want to quote from a newsletter from a business organization that I much respect and get along with, Illinois Retail Merchants Association. In Irma's recent newsletter, it describes the fair tax amendment. And Rob Carr then wrote this: it is vital to remember that this plan is a long, and that's in caps, it is vital to remember that this plan is a long way from becoming reality, and there is nothing to say it can't be changed. Bottom line, there are at least 19 more months before anything can happen. So I'm glad to be here with you today with my colleague, Representative Batinick, to start the conversation. So a number of you have asked us, how's your Easter break been? And we gave you funny looks. That's because we've been busy being, as I put it, and I don't mean this as a joke, being nourished by our districts. Our districts are, in my view, the antidote to being in Springfield. I see bipartisan nods here. So I want to mention to you that over the last 10 days, I've met with a number of organizations and individuals, and all of them, to put it harshly, had their hand out. All of them are seeking money from Springfield. And here are the organizations that I've met with. They include fire chiefs, a private university president, leaders of 2 child welfare organizations, the director of an adult daycare center, nursing home managers, mental health care providers, the board president, superintendent, and principal of a K-8 school district, the Will County CED, and the members of the Brain Injury Support Group at Easter Seals in Joliet. So they've all made requests of me that they either be included in the capital bill or as a appropriation line in the budget. And all their requests strike me as legitimate. So the challenge then is, of course, to find money in the state budget to provide the support that these, to me, worthy organizations tell me they need in order to provide services to those whom they serve. So obviously the first common sense step would be to look in existing state spending and see where we can economize. And I want to give you a specific example of that. I'm proud of my district, and that includes Stateville Penitentiary. So to the worry of my wife, I keep going back. I keep going back into Stateville. And I take Democratic and Republican colleagues. Well, immediately north of Stateville, that white building on Division Street between Weber and 53 is the NRC, the Northern Reception Center. Every county from Peoria north, upon sentencing a man to the state prison, sends him there to be processed. Well, I think it was February 28th, I was in there and with, again, some colleagues, and we heard about turnarounds. We heard the term turnaround, and we asked for more information on turnarounds. Here's what we learned. Those buses that you see, you know, the buses coming from Cook County, the vans you see coming from, say, Freeport and Stevenson County, they're bringing offenders there to be processed. Hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of them every week. 1 in 10 is found not to owe the state any time. They've already served their sentence at the county jail. Yet the county transports them here, and we begin processing them. And our state employees, DOC, in the records room, they perform what's called a sentence calculation. They find the person doesn't know the state any time. So then our DOC personnel drop them off at the Joliet train station. So there is great bipartisan interest in making that those unnecessary trips and not having them be made, and freeing up our personnel there as well as personnel at the counties for work that really needs to be done. So I looked at my phone a minute ago, and I'm glad I did. It was a message from a staff person in Springfield. We're setting up a subcommittee on prison, and the new Republican Senator, Steve McGuire, former prosecutor, he and I hope to hold a hearing in mid-May about this problem. So we're going to have the Illinois Supreme Court there, we're going to have the Department of Corrections, we're going to have sheriffs, we're going to have county clerks, and try to figure out how we can put an end to these turnarounds, an obvious waste of the time and money of counties in the state of Illinois. So that's one example of where I hope we can trim some current spending. But credible budget experts on both the left and the right, Ralph Martire, Lawrence Massal, and others, say that we can't cut our way to a position of providing necessary services that the people of Illinois legitimately need. So, what does that mean, Jeff?
30 seconds.
No. All right, so here's my position. We need adequate revenue, adequate. And it needs to be collected fairly. It needs to be sustainable, and it needs to be accompanied by responsible spending, responsible. Of course, we now have a flat income tax rate, and we've talked about stability, the damage that does to families and institutions. That our flat income tax rate has been erratic. Since it was instituted in 1969, it's been changed 6 times. The rate has bounced up and down. In the last 8 years, it's gone from 5% to 3.75%, now 4.95%. If you wonder why it's 4.95%, that's because Speaker Madigan suggested that 5% would be a reasonable figure. Bruce Rauner didn't want to agree with Mike Madigan on anything, so he agreed to 4.95. Thank you.
I want to remind the timekeeper that I yield some of my previous time in this section. A couple quick notes. I really enjoy being at functions with my colleagues on the other side of the Alphaville County. I would put them, if this is okay, would put them in the more reasonable centrist area in terms of Democrats in the state right now, and we have some crazy spenders out there, to say the least. There's some crazy bills going on in the Capitol. And a lot of people say my roommate Tom Bennett is the nicest man in the House. If I had to guess, Pat McGuire would probably win the award for the Senate. I don't know the senators all that well. But I have to be on the opposite side of this particular issue, Senator. I'm not a sponsor of the constitutional amendment for the graduated income tax. And the idea that it's just going to take a few more $1 billion and we're going to have our problem solved is the problem. The problem is that we're not taking a serious look at the fundamental things that are causing our out-migration, businesses leaving, family leaving. At the table I was talking, everybody's talking about their kids are going to college out of state. And it's not because we don't fund colleges enough. We're actually between 3rd and 8th in the funding of higher education. Now it has been cut, it used to be more. But we actually fund it well, and we still have higher tuitions and are less generous with scholarships and whatnot because we're inefficient at the way we provide government services. I just got this letter sent to me this morning. Marquise Inc. shelves $500 million project citing Illinois business issues. Illinois government's anti-business and high-tax policies would require us to pursue company expansions in surrounding states. Senate Bill 1407 is an example of legislation that will negatively impact our company's expansion plans, removing our company's choice in construction contractors we hire and the agreed upon price between 2 parties, reducing competition and inflating costs. So we passed a bunch of small bills. We passed a horrific insurance bill a few months ago. We passed an insurance bill that was supposed to deal with mesothelioma. It's a horrible disease, and it lays dormant. So work comp only lasts for 25 years, right? After 25 years, there's a statute of limitations. So there's a Supreme Court case that said, hey, we have to rule for the defendant that this isn't right, that this person isn't covered under insurance. And they recommended that we extend the time limit for mesothelioma and we keep it within the Work Comp and Occupational Health Act. So what did we do? We didn't do anything about mesothelioma. We did anything about latent injuries and pulled it from the act. What does that mean? That means that any business can have somebody sue them. They don't, the insurance coverage doesn't exist for this now. And they could say, hey, I sat in a chair 35 years ago, I had back pain, that's a latent injury, I'm gonna sue you, there's no insurance for it, I'm gonna go to civil court for it. This is scaring the bejesus out of businesses. If you want to know why there's out-migration, Representative Walsh is correct, manufacturers are leaving. They're leaving because of high work comp costs, high property taxes. Manufacturing is growing in surrounding states, and anti-job growth bills like this one that was just brought up. We can't continue to pass these bills and think that just some newfangled way of collecting taxes from the citizens is going to fix things. Look at Walhall right now. We rank 51st when you include Washington, D.C. in overall tax climate. We're the worst. More taxes isn't the solution. We talked about higher ed. I decided to just do a little digging this morning. We seem to do everything at the extremes. There needs to be balance. There needs to be balance between labor and commerce. There needs to be balance between regulations. I don't want dirty water. I don't want dirty skies. There needs to be balance between business interests and the environment. We all want those things. We want good schools. There needs to be balance, and you have to have enough taxes to pay for quality education, but you can't waste money. And I said, okay, we fund higher education so much. I just want to drill down at certain examples. So I looked at prevailing wage. I've never been a right to work guy. I think prevailing wage makes sense. So I looked at Western Illinois University, Minneapolis, Hennepin County, so the county where Western Illinois is, and Iowa State University. So in McDonough County, the average household income is $42,911. In Johnson County, Iowa, where the University of Iowa is, the average income is just a couple knocks below 60 grand a year. In Hennepin County, it's about 75 grand a year. Well, the prevailing wage for laborers in McDonough County, where Western Illinois is almost double what it is where the University of Iowa is, and is equal to where Minnesota is. A big, thriving metropolitan area with a $75,000 average household income has roughly the same prevailing wage rate there that we have in some small rural community. So we thrust that upon them. Then we thrust on a $15 an hour minimum wage. Then we thrust on regulations like this. And you wonder why Western Illinois University takes in more money, but still has to charge higher tuition than everybody else. It's all these things layered upon themselves. There are so many things, you know, we took away the opportunity for small businesses to stack health insurance. Health insurance is hugely skyrocketing. So at the federal level, they said, okay, you can take my short-term insurance and stack it for a year. I know a lot of all small business owners were like, finally, I got something that I can afford. Well, last year we decided that. Government knows better, we're not gonna let you buy that product. You're pushing a small business owner on either having small business or pushing them out of the state. You know, we passed a bill that said you can't have public safety directors at the local level. You can't have it. You need to have a separate fire department chief and a police chief. Yeah, a couple $100,000 to Bolingbrook, but that's what we decided. During this 2016 campaign, President Trump used to make fun of the Ohio governor, Kasich, saying, oh, you just got lucky on fracking. Well, guess what? We didn't get lucky on fracking because our regulatory department's a mess. Nobody's fracking in Illinois. We got none of the revenue from that. And with this progressive income tax, you know what we're going to do? We're going to skip pension payments for the next 7 years, $1.1 billion a year. The two biggest issues affecting the state, we're going to take big things, pensions and property taxes. And we're going to short pensions after we raise income taxes. Until you address pensions, that elephant in the room, and then property taxes, you aren't going to have a long-term solution. And the rates that they're talking about with the graduated income tax don't even pay for the bills 5 years from now. So what are they going to do? They're going to slide those rates down. They're going to slide them down to the middle class, and we're going to keep doing the same thing over and over again, forcing the same people out of the state. We have to fundamentally change the way we do everything. We can't keep pissing on job creators. It's been too long. Therefore, I'm opposed to the graduate income tax.